This is a
Okay,
miracle.
it is a miracle. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our EIDL PPP Open Q&A webinar with the SBA. Thank you for your patience. We love Zoom, but sometimes technology doesn't love us back, and so we're just having some difficulties, but we're good to go. So I see people kind of filtrating in here, and we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. My name is Julie Hinker, and I'm the program coordinator for the SDCEO Women's Business Center. We're the only women's business center in the state of South Dakota, and our actual physical location is on the campus of Black Hills State University. And our main goal is to help women launch new businesses or help them grow their existing ones. And we do this through free one-on-one business advising. So if you're interested in launching a business or want guidance on maybe how to pivot your business, we do this advising for free, and we'd love to help you out. We also offer different webinars, trainings like the ones you're on here. And we also do networking opportunities, conferences, leadership opportunities and conferences, and lots more. So look us up, follow us on Facebook, social media. We'd love to get in touch with you and help you out. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded. So we just ask that once the recording is over today, we will actually email you personally with the link to the recording and the slides. So if you have any questions or want to email our panelists later, we do ask that you contact them via email, or they have their direct lines for you available, which is really awesome. So if you have additional questions, you can contact the experts. I would like to mention too that the chat is going to be the best way to kind of get a hold of our panelists and our lovely Pam. She's on with us with the SBA. She will be able to answer questions over the webinar today. So I'll just kind of be monitoring that, checking it once in a while, but that's going to be the best way to get your questions in. So just make sure you utilize that. I'll be watching it throughout the presentation. And before I hand it over to our expert, I would like to welcome Wendy Klug, who is the program manager with the VBOC of the Dakotas. Wendy, are you on?
I believe I still am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. What events are coming up this December for VBOC of the Dakotas that we should be watching out for?
Yes, so we have a couple things going on. This Thursday with you guys, the SDCEO WBC, we have our webinar going on about how to engage your audience by being human and how to make sure that your customer is first. It gives you some ideas for the holidays just about turning your product into something that catches somebody's attention. We also have a reboot, which is a 3.5-hour virtual virtual workshop for starting and growing a business. Just so you know, if you're not able to attend that at the time it is at, you are welcome to sign up and still watch the recording. All that information, sign up details, specific times can be found on our Facebook. Just visit us, VBOC of the Dakotas, and look under our events. Thank you, Julie.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. It's great to be a partner with you, and we appreciate you being on with us today. So it is time to hand it over to Pam Selberg, who is our expert for this morning. She has some really awesome slides and updates for us, and she is with the SBA, and so I am just grateful she's on, and we are working and good to go. And so I'm going to hand it over to her for the presentation. Pam?
Thank you, Julie. And I don't think you're not going to be able to see me. Is that correct? You can just hear me?
Yep, we can just hear your lovely voice, but that's okay.
Yep, that's all right. And then are you able to navigate the slides then?
Yep, I will handle it for you.
Okay, perfectly. Sorry about the connectivity issue, but we have been asked not to go into the federal building. And so this morning I went there and I was asked to leave. And so I need to go in tonight and then bring all my stuff home. So I'm sorry about all of this, but we're going to make it work. And, you know, there's always plan B, it seems like. Anyway, we're going to dig into today's webinar, but I want to talk a little bit about next week's webinar. I will have a guest speaker on with us, and typically we go over the EIDL and the PPP every Tuesday. But next week, we are going to have a senior area manager from North Dakota, Hetty, join us. And the reason why she is joining us, she reached out to me, and both Hetty and I worked disaster for about 90 days. And we realized that there were still a lot of people that could not actually apply for the EIDL loan because of their credit scores. And so we are going to be going over next week how to improve your credit score, what we look at on your credit score, because you still have until December 31st to apply for the EIDL loan. So we thought maybe it would be a good idea to go over all of that information on a webinar. So for those people that couldn't apply based on not qualifying based on their credit score, hopefully they would have enough time then to be able to increase their score and be able to apply for the EIDL funds for COVID. So with that being said, if we can go to the first slide, I'd appreciate it, Julie. So usually every week we go through some of the different updates that have come out. And just for any lender that's on the line, it is important that you are aware that coming up, we are going to be changing one of our most critical forms, and the 4506T form is going to be changed to the 4506C form. And so please make sure I put the link in there on how you can get the new form. It's really hasn't changed much, but you lenders want to familiarize yourself with the new form, because after February 28th of next year, you will not be able to use the 4506T form anymore. And as you all know, every application requires this form. So it's going to be changed from the 4506T to the 4506C. Next screen, Julie. Some of this gets pretty small, but Julie will be sending out all the attachments in an email to those participants that are on the line. And again, what we have done is try to condense for you lenders in kind of a one-shot snapshot form what you need to do on your 1502 reporting for full forgiveness, for full forgiveness. Boy, that's a mouthful. And then the next slide, Julie, is going to go over partial forgiveness. So again, these slides will be attached and Julie will get those sent out after the webinar. The next screen, please. SBA, as everybody knows, has been the victim of a lot of fraud scams, either through the PPP program or through the EIDL program. And one of the common ways that fraudsters are trying to obtain information is through what we call theme phishing attempts. And so please read this slide over. It goes and tells you what if you get a call, let's say from a borrower, and the borrower said, hey, I got this email. Keep in mind, if the email is not sent from an SBA.gov email, more than likely it is fraud. And then this slide will go on to say how that person can report that information or that phishing scheme to SBA, and so that our OIG department can get on it and do further research on it. But that, again, it seems like every week we get on these webinars and we discuss fraud. And I can tell you that the fraud schemes have not died down. In fact, I think they're getting more, the fraudsters are becoming smarter and smarter as this program goes on. So next screen, please. So there were some errors in the forgiveness payment platform. And again, I just kind of highlighted those a little bit and what you need to do if you as a lender get those errors, as far as the EIDL advance error or the EIN error. And then again, if there's any PPP related questions, we're really asking lenders to use that forgiveness.sba.gov website to be able to send your messages over. And the reason why we're doing that is to make sure that the answers are consistent. And again, headquarters is compiling all the questions that come in from the lenders to see what type of guidance we need to send out and to maybe further clarify the guidance as we get more into this forgiveness process. Next screen, please. Again, our frequently asked questions. We have put together a whole series of slides on the difference between PPP versus EIDL. And Julie, go to the next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like my screens were out of whack a little bit. Sorry about that. This one is the new SBA procedural notice. It talks about acceptable signatures on applications and loan documents. And again, that is through actually yesterday. And then, hold on, I want to just read. Okay, that's all that is. Sorry, I'm trying to work off of my phone because of connectivity issues. So go ahead to the next slide, Julie. Okay, and here where we get a little bit small, you guys, but again, we're going to be sending out these slides. We put together, like I said, the document showing the difference between EIDL and PPP. I think it's a very good document. It kind of highlights the EIDL program versus the PPP, and it will go in and, for example, on this slide, it tells you what the EIDL loan is as far as the description of it versus the PPP, what the purpose of the EIDL loan is versus the PPP, what amounts are available on the EIDL loan versus the PPP, terms, collateral, personal guarantee, and forgivable, whether or not they are forgivable or not. And you'll see down there that the EIDL loan is no. Loans may be repaid at any time with no prepayment penalty, but the EIDL loans are not forgivable. The only thing on the EIDL that is forgivable would be the advance. But if you receive the advance and also got the PPP loan, you have to deduct the advance from your PPP forgiveness. And again, next slide, please, Julie. And so then we go into frequently asked questions. Can I apply for both the EIDL and the PPP? The answer is yes, that the borrowers can apply for both, although funds from, I can't read that little, sorry, on my phone, cannot be used for the same purpose. So again, we're trying to address some of the most common questions that come out on the EIDL loan versus the PPP as you borrowers and lenders are trying to navigate the forgiveness portion of it. Next slide, please. It said, what can I use COVID funds for? And hold on, I have these. Bear with me just 1 second. I'm sorry. And how is it different than the PPP funds? So the EIDL proceeds can be used to cover a wide array of working capital needs and normal operating expenses, such as continuation of healthcare benefits, rent, utilities, and fixed debt payments, where the PPP program loan proceeds may only be used for eligible payroll cost. Next slide, please. We talk about who is eligible again for the COVID-19 EIDL loan. And then we compare that, next slide, please, versus the PPP. This one says, what if I'm not a US citizen? And again, we address that and tell, those people that are not a US citizen how to determine whether or not they are qualified for the EIDL or COVID programs. Next slide, please. What is the process to receive the EIDL loan? Again, we go step by step, what you need to do to apply for EIDL. Remember, it's still not too late to apply for EIDL funds. So for those of you that have not yet, and you maybe thought it was too late, please know that you still have an opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. And then the EIDL process. What happens if I'm approved and what happens if I'm declined? And then it goes through the steps. So for those of you that were declined, we go in and we tell you how to apply for a reconsideration. And we do encourage you to do that. Remember, we had so many applications come in that a lot of the application, as far as the approval process, was determined through the system. So if there was anything quirky in your application, it more than likely was a decline. And then again, doesn't necessarily mean you can't qualify, just means that your application did not pass the algorithms to make the application approvable. And so we tell you on what you need to do if your application is declined. Next slide, please. How can I check the status of my application? Again, we go in and we tell you that, but the best thing you need to do is really contact customer service at 800-659-2955. And they do have extended hours. They work all hours to adjust to all time zones. Next slide, please. Again, they talks about if I received an initial loan quote, what does that mean? And we tell you that, you know, what that actually means. There are people that are now asking, what do I do if I need additional funds? You would go back in and you would ask for reconsideration. And so we give you that information also in this handout. Again, the next slide. I received the loan and how do I make payments? Keep in mind, if you receive the EIDL loan, your payments are deferred for 1 year. After that 1 year, then we will be sending you out a coupon book. But if you are charged the interest during this year, but if you want to start making payments, this is the address that you send that information to and the information that needs to be included on your check. Next slide, please. I have a business partner, but he or she does not want to be included. Can I still apply? And again, it goes on to say that all owners who are 20% or more of the business are required to be included on the application. Next slide. What if I need more money than what I've been approved for? COVID-19 EIDLs can be modified by increasing the amount up to 6 months of working capital. So what we found out is at the very beginning, there were a lot of borrowers that quickly applied just because they needed money and not realizing really how the program worked. So they got this initial amount and now they're finding out that they need more. This is the type of documentation that you need to send in to ask for your reconsideration. And then in this presentation too, we're going to give you the information on where to send it. Next slide, please. What if I don't need as much money as what I've been approved of? Again, we go in and we tell you what the steps you need to take to go ahead and send some of that money back. There's no reason to borrow more money than what you need, but I will caution you before returning the funds, make sure that you know you're not going to need the funds now or in the near future, because as you all know, it's a difficult process sometimes to get your application in and to get it approved. Next slide, please. I have multiple business. Can I submit multiple COVID-19 EIDL applications? Not PPP, but EIDL. Yes, you can submit one application per eligible business. That's different than the PPP, because on the PPP, remember, we told one application per borrower, where this one, yes, you can submit if you have multiple businesses. Next slide. I've been declined. What could the reasons be? We're going to cover that a little bit next week as well. But again, I had it in this presentation, so I wanted to get it out to you guys. So if any of you have been declined for these reasons here, we give you the information on how to go back in and to resubmit. If it was declined because of credit report, please tune in next week. And Hetty and myself will be going over the credit report requirements for the EIDL and the PPP program. PPP is a little bit too late, but we're really just going to address EIDL next week. Next slide, please. Can I request a reconsideration? Again, you have up to 6 months to request a reconsideration. So if you were declined back in June and you don't think that you have time, you still do have time. You have 6 months to reapply for reconsideration, and your application does not go down to the bottom of the pile. Those reconsiderations go to a separate department. Those people are diligently working to, and I will give them credit. They really try to reach out and help you to qualify. A lot of times, like I said, there was just something quirky when the application was submitted that made it so that it was not approved through the normal system. Next slide, please. Again, talks about reconsideration. Next slide. Oh, okay. Now this talks about if you've received a COVID loan and you've been affected by civil unrest. I don't know that there have been any damaged businesses in town here, but if there was graffiti or broken windows, something of that sort, and you feel that you need more money, again, the program is set up to help you with that. And that was a separate disaster declaration. Next slide. I've already had the PPP and COVID-19 EIDL, and my business has not recovered yet. What do I do? If your business received a PPP loan or an EIDL assistance because of COVID-19, and even if you have another SBA disaster loan from a previous disaster, you may still qualify for a new SBA disaster loan for losses resulting from a declared disaster in your community. So a lot of people don't realize that we have multiple disasters going on right now. South Dakota still has some disaster declarations out there for drought, for tornado. So not only are we doing COVID-19 disaster works, but we also have other disasters out there. And because of the lack of moisture that we that we're dealing with right now, we very well could become drought disaster. And again, you're just going to want to either reach out to us or go on sba.gov/disaster, and you can look up all the disasters in all the different counties in South Dakota. Next slide, please. Okay, if you get another disaster loan due to civil unrest or a natural disaster, can I consolidate them? No, each disaster loan is separate. And I'll give you an example of that. You know, down in the, New Orleans area, it seems that they've been hit very hard for the last 3 years. So if those people applied for a disaster loan 3 years ago, and then another one, and then another one, all 3 of those disaster loans are separate and you cannot consolidate them. Next slide, please. Given that my business has not yet recovered from the COVID shutdown, how will I handle it? Payments for COVID-19 loans are deferred for the 1 year, and that's why, because typically we find in all disasters that we work in that people need a recovery time frame. And so we automatically give you that 1 year. New disaster loans for civil unrest and other disasters are automatically deferred for 1 year. If you qualify for a new disaster loan, you can request that SBA extend the deferment of your loan payments to help with the financial hardship. So what I want people to realize is that, the 1 year hasn't come upon us yet, but we're not too far away from it. If you applied early on in the process, it could have been in April when you got your first EIDL loan. Now we're in, let's say it's going to be April of next year and you cannot afford to make your payments. Anytime you have a loan with the government and you run into financial hardship, the best thing you can do is call us sooner than later. Contact our servicing department, because as the government, we have multiple workout situations that we really try to assist our borrowers with. And so please don't ignore it and don't put your head in the sand thinking it's going to go away. Make sure you reach out to servicing. And there's a whole department that's set up strictly for people that have disaster loans that have not been able to recover. Next slide. How is the process for applying for a civil unrest or other disaster? Again, I laid that out here for you. Next slide, please. Disaster assistance at a glance. I know this print gets kind of small, you guys, but again, we've put it all together for you and into, you know, a handout that I think is very, very helpful. So this will come out to you and then you can print it or expand the print on your own and kind of read through all the different categories there. Next slide.
Pam, that is the final slide.
Okay, good. So again, that was a lot of information, but I think it's a great overview. You know, we continually get a lot of questions and I think this would help answer it, kind of give you your own document per se to tell the difference between the EIDL and the PPP. You know, keep in mind, we still have PPP money outstanding. You know, what Congress will do with that money, we don't know. But this type of a document is something I think that you should save and really, you know, hold on to for future reference.
Yes, thank you, Pam. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I see one pop in here. Okay, Pam, why are EIDL not being forgiven? We should have let employees just claim an unemployment assistance. We used PPP as well and followed the guidelines, but feel uneasy about the EIDL. What are your thoughts on this, Pam?
Okay, so the EIDL loan program is used for totally different purposes. The EIDL loan program is the only working capital loan program out there. The first question was, why isn't it forgiven? Because Congress won't allow it to be. Okay, the EIDL loan is not a PPP loan. It's not used. I mean, you can use it for some payroll, but the majority of that EIDL loan money needs to go towards working capital, helping you make long-term debt payments, helping you make lease payments, over and beyond what the PPP loan couldn't do. So you can have your PPP loan and you can have an EIDL loan, but you're right, you do need to pay back the EIDL loan, but it's amortized over 30 years. And the purpose of that EIDL loan, again, is a working capital loan, where the PPP loan was strictly used, or, you know, strictly to be used for payroll. The EIDL advance was to be used for payroll, but the EIDL loan itself was to be used for working capital. And we don't have the control. I mean, that's an actual congressional determination of what loans can be forgiven and what can't be. And the PPP loan, you're right. In order to get PPP funds, you had to put your people back on payroll, but not on EIDL, because EIDL, the intent of the EIDL loan, and you'll see it in the handouts that I just gave you, would be to be used for long-term, to be used for working capital purposes more than payroll.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. Okay, we have another question here. As a self-employed small business owner and do not have any employees, I need to understand exactly how to apply for PPP forgiveness.
So the best thing you need to do for PPP forgiveness, you have to visit with your lender. That is, I cannot stress that enough. You and your lender need to sit down, because at the end of the day, the lender is the one that is going to apply for forgiveness on your behalf. So you can apply for forgiveness without having employees. It's totally in the regulations. It's totally in the frequently asked questions. And most of the lenders are very, very familiar with that process. You need to visit with your lender. You and your lender need to come up and agree on the amount of forgiveness. Make sure you're, you know, in sync with what your lender has, because your lender is going to apply for forgiveness through SBA, and you want to make sure that all of your forgiveness has been included so that you don't have a residual amount that you have to put on payments. So make sure you get with your lender and make sure you and your lender sit down and complete the forgiveness application process.
Awesome. Let me just double check here. If there's any final questions, please place those into the chat or the Q&A. Again, if you think of a question later on today or later this week when we send out the recording and the slides and you take a closer look at everything, please feel free to reach out to Pam. you know, her contact information will be sent in the email, and I know she'd be happy to either address your question and hopefully get you an answer, or get you to somebody that can help you. So we really encourage that if you do come along something later today or later this week. But I'm not seeing any additional questions here, Pam, so we can kind of close things out. Thank you, Pam, for getting on. I know it's been a crazy morning with technology, but it's worked out great. We're glad that everyone could join us. I would just like to remind you that next week's EIDL and PPP webinar will be a featured webinar on credit scores, and Pam will be on with a guest speaker, and we would encourage you to come and kind of listen to that and see what that webinar is all about. And I will include all of this in the follow-up email along with the slides and the recording. You can register for the webinar then via the email. So if there's no further questions, thank you all for being on with us today. Thank you to Pam for joining us, and Wendy. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we will hopefully see you all next Tuesday. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.